What if pain itself was never just an accident of history, but a carefully crafted tool? Imagine hidden chambers where initiates of secret societies endured torment, not as punishment, but as design. Trauma was not simply endured. It was engineered, shaped into a weapon of obedience. Have you ever felt how fear can silence memory? How suffering can bend the will? Then you already sense the key they discovered centuries ago. From the rituals of ancient brotherhoods to experiments buried in the Cold War, the blueprint remained the same. Break the mind, fracture the spirit, and rebuild obedience out of silence. Secret societies knew that symbols carved into stone or whispered in rituals could bind memory to pain. What we call rituals were, for them, systems of control. What we dismiss as superstition may have been hidden technology, techniques that reach deeper than chains, straight into thought itself. But here lies the forbidden question. Who dared to transform agony into architecture? Which hands first realized that trauma could mold nations as easily as it molded individuals? What you'll discover now may surprise you, because the echoes of these practices didn't vanish in the shadows of history. They evolved, reappearing in declassified files, in global conspiracies, in the unseen patterns that still shape belief today. As you follow this trail, notice the symbols you've seen before. In monuments, in films, in places you never thought to question. Do you see the connections? Share your awakening. Write in the comments, I see the hidden signs. And if you wish to keep walking through these revelations, subscribe, because the journey does not end here. Because someone, somewhere, once chose to turn human pain into a silent weapon. And the mystery that remains is not whether it happened, but how far it still goes. Fear has always been the oldest language of power. In hidden chambers, secret societies shaped rituals where pain was not an accident, but a calculated step. Imagine a hooded initiate standing in the dark, subjected to trials of fire, of silence, of isolation. The point was not to test strength, it was to break identity, to fracture the mind so it could be rebuilt in obedience. Mind control was never born in laboratories alone. It began in shadows, in rituals whispered through generations, where trauma was the invisible seal of loyalty. History is littered with these traces. In the Eleusinian mysteries of ancient Greece, initiates were led into chambers where fear and sensory manipulation prepared them for enlightenment. In medieval orders, pain was sanctified as purification, a mark of belonging. And in modern times, echoes resurface in the dark agenda of projects like MK Ultra, where science borrowed what rituals had already proven, that trauma opens a door into the unseen regions of the mind. Hidden symbols etched in walls, flames flickering in, circles, chants repeating in endless loops. Each was a code designed to destabilize thought, to bind memory with fear. But why? Why would societies, both ancient and modern, invest in suffering as their instrument of choice? The answer lies not in cruelty for its own sake, but in psychological influence. Trauma silences questions. It leaves the initiate pliable, searching for safety in the very hands that inflicted the pain. It is manipulation perfected, a forbidden knowledge handed down not through books, but through wounds. The unseen powers understood that once fear reshaped identity, the individual could be guided by symbols, by rituals, by whispers of hidden truth. Have you noticed how even today, institutions cloak themselves in ceremonies filled with strange symbols, oaths, and ordeals? Why does power always seem to demand submission through fear, whether subtle or overt? These are not coincidences. They are continuities. And if trauma has long been a tool of secret societies, then perhaps its purpose reaches far beyond the individual. Perhaps it was never about one initiate in the shadows, but about the collective mind waiting to be molded. But that's only the surface. Let's go deeper. When pain strikes one person, it leaves scars. But when trauma engulfs entire nations, it leaves something far more useful for those who understand the mechanics of fear. Collective suffering becomes an invisible weapon, a force capable of reshaping societies without a single sword being raised. Think of wars, plagues, and sudden catastrophes. To most, they are tragedies. To secret societies moving in the shadows, they are opportunities, occasions to mold the collective mind. Trauma is not only endured, it is harvested. History provides the evidence. After the Black Death swept across Europe, panic and despair created fertile ground for movements cloaked in ritual and secrecy. In the ashes of the Great Wars, symbols of rebuilding and new orders appeared with uncanny precision, as if pre-planned, to guide broken populations into obedience. Even epidemics in more recent centuries carried with them not just sickness, but new systems of control, laws, surveillance, structures that remained long after the crisis ended. Each disaster was more than an accident. It was a stage, and on that stage, manipulation danced in silence. Why does fear unify the masses so effectively? Because trauma strips away individuality. It makes people desperate for safety, hungry for direction, willing to follow whoever claims to hold the cure. Secret societies have always understood this. Their occult rituals often mirrored large-scale crises, condensing chaos into symbolic ordeals. Hidden symbols scattered across monuments, flags and institutions serve as reminders, triggers planted into the collective unconscious. The unseen hand writes its language in pain, and entire civilizations learn to read without realizing. This is why conspiracies linger across centuries. The same patterns, the same manipulation, the same hidden power reappear, just cloaked, in new forms. When shadows fall, when fear spreads, the dark agenda advances, offering structure in exchange for obedience. What the individual feels in isolation, the fracture of identity, is replicated at the scale of nations. Have you ever wondered if that sense of dread during a crisis is natural, or if it is carefully amplified? And here is where the awakening begins. Pause for a moment. Look back at the last great crisis you lived through. What symbols did you see repeated? What rituals unfolded in plain sight, disguised as ceremonies, slogans, or protocols? If you recognize them now, you are not alone. Write in the comments, "I will not be controlled." Your words become a sign against the unseen, a declaration that you see through the veil. But trauma as a tool is not limited to one era or one event. It stretches across centuries, evolving with every war, every epidemic, every disaster. Always the same promise: protection, order, renewal, delivered with the same cost: submission. And if these societies appear again and again at the edge of every tragedy, can we still call it coincidence? Or is it evidence of a hidden design, one that continues to guide humanity through fear? Symbols are never random. They are the language of the unseen, coded shapes that speak directly to the subconscious. When the mind is fractured by trauma, these symbols embed themselves like seeds, hidden yet alive, waiting to be triggered. The initiate who endures pain is shown the eye, the triangle, the number that repeats until it no longer feels like chance. To the untrained, they are harmless designs. To those within the circle, they are ancient codes, tools of mind control refined through centuries of practice. Fear and pain carve deep grooves in memory, and once those grooves exist, the symbol becomes a switch, turning emotions on and off with a glance. Consider how this pattern appears again and again across history. In Egyptian temples, the Eye of Horus stared back at initiates enduring secret rites. In medieval cathedrals, grotesque figures and geometric windows whispered of forbidden knowledge, etched into stone where few dared to ask questions. In the corridors of secret societies like the Freemasons or the Rosicrucians, Rituals combined suffering with symbols, binding the initiate's pain to hidden truth. And later, when governments embraced science as their cloak, experiments with psychological influence carried the same principles forward. MK Ultra was not inventing, it was inheriting. The dark agenda understands that pain makes memory malleable. A soldier shattered by war remembers the sound of explosions, the flash of light, the repeated insignia on the banners above. A society devastated by epidemic remembers the slogans, the symbols posted on walls, the rituals of compliance disguised as safety. Trauma does not erase, it imprints. And when hidden symbols are introduced in that fragile state, they fuse with fear, becoming emotional triggers that can guide behavior long after the wounds have healed. Have you noticed how certain numbers or shapes seem to haunt architecture, media, even entertainment? Triangles, circles, serpents swallowing their tails. They appear where they should not, always repeating, always familiar. Is it coincidence, or a carefully orchestrated web of manipulation? When the mind is softened by suffering, these patterns bypass reason and go straight into the unseen, aligning thought with the will of the hidden power. Secret societies learned this through occult rituals. Modern institutions disguise it as design, but the result is the same: psychological influence, masquerading as art, truth buried beneath symbols the crowd never questions. And so we are left with a disturbing revelation. What if the collective traumas of our past, wars, disasters, epidemics, were not just exploited for political gain, but encoded with symbols to shape the collective mind for generations? What if hidden symbols carved into monuments and scattered across screens are not decorative at all, but remnants of ancient conspiracies still unfolding? The forbidden knowledge whispers that trauma is only the first step. The real control begins with what the traumatized mind is taught to see, and how those visions are repeated until they shape belief itself. But why do these same symbols persist across cultures and centuries? Why does every empire, every order, every shadowed institution cling to the same geometry, the same images, the same codes? Is it because they tap into something universal? Something buried deep within the human psyche that pain alone can unlock? Or is it because a single hidden hand has always been writing the script, ensuring that the language of control remains unbroken? But that's only the surface. Let's go deeper. Science claimed to be the triumph of reason, yet in the shadows of the Cold War, it borrowed from the same occult rituals it once dismissed. MK Ultra was the proof. A project born under the CIA, cloaked in secrecy, feeding on forbidden knowledge that had circulated through secret societies for centuries. Instead of fire and blood in ancient chambers, the tools became syringes, electrodes, sound frequencies, hallucinogenic substances. But the principle was identical: fracture the mind, erase the self, and rebuild obedience out of silence. Mind control was never just about espionage. It was about discovering how deeply pain and symbols could rewire human identity. Declassified documents reveal fragments of this hidden agenda. Test subjects, soldiers, prisoners, psychiatric patients, even unsuspecting civilians, were exposed to LSD, hypnotic suggestion, sleep deprivation, and electric shocks. Some were told it was therapy. Others never knew they were part of an experiment at all. Many broke. Many vanished, and the few who survived carried the weight of psychological influence so profound it haunted them for life. The official story claims it was research gone astray, but those who look closer see a continuum, an inheritance from the occult rituals of the past, now disguised as science. Consider the patterns. In ancient initiations, the initiate endured agony until they surrendered to the order's hidden power. In MK Ultra's laboratories, the subject endured chemical chaos until their will collapsed. Both ended in the same place, an empty vessel, waiting to be filled with new commands, new symbols, new truth. Hidden symbols often appeared in these experiments too, drawn on walls, inserted into test environments, embedded in subliminal messages. Was this superstition carried over, or a calculated recognition that symbols anchor trauma and serve as keys to the subconscious? This is where the shadows grow heavier, because fragments of testimony, along with redacted files, suggest that the purpose of MK Ultra was never merely national defense. It was about learning how to shape societies. If you can control one mind, you can control many. And if trauma and symbols can bind individuals, then collective crises can bind entire populations. Occult rituals became protocols, ancient codes became research programs, and forbidden knowledge became the blueprint of modern manipulation. Think carefully here. If these experiments had truly been abandoned, why do the same methods appear in culture today? Subliminal patterns in media, rituals disguised as mass events, manipulation of fear through disasters that reset the rules of society. Is it not? The same psychological influence repackaged, the same dark agenda hidden in plain sight. What was once a secret in temples and lodges became a project in sterile laboratories. And what was once denied by governments is now visible in the symbols scattered across our daily lives. The question remains, how far did they go? Were these experiments really terminated, or simply renamed, hidden under new projects, buried in classified archives where only fragments are allowed to surface? When you trace the line from occult rituals to CIA laboratories, and then into today's technologies, the pattern becomes harder to deny. The forbidden knowledge did not vanish. It evolved. The unseen hand continues its work, moving through new forms of control, new languages of obedience. But that's only the surface. Because if symbols and rituals could bind the broken mind of one subject, what happens when those same techniques are scaled to nations, to cultures, to the entire collective psyche? The laboratory walls may have crumbled. The classified projects may have been stamped terminated. But the experiment never truly ended. It only changed form. What once happened in hidden chambers now unfolds in front of us every day. Wrapped in entertainment, masked as culture. Trauma and media became inseparable, and what ancient occult rituals once performed in secrecy is now broadcast globally. Think of the films you've watched, the songs you've heard on repeat, the commercials that flash symbols faster than the eye can process. Behind the spectacle lies the same principle: fear, repetition, and hidden symbols designed to stir emotions, just enough to bypass reason. Mind control thrives not in overt commands, but in suggestion. A film framed around catastrophe conditions the audience to anticipate fear. A song repeating phrases of despair or obsession leaves echoes in the subconscious. Advertisements flashing forbidden knowledge through imagery embed associations that the conscious mind forgets, but the body remembers. And when trauma has already fractured society, when shadows of crisis hang heavy, these messages strike deeper. They activate memory. They awaken the grooves carved long ago. Secret societies always understood the power of spectacle. Ancient codes were never meant for dusty manuscripts. They were meant to be performed, seen, heard. Today's mass, media is the stage, and the audience is global. A blockbuster filled with apocalyptic imagery is more than fiction. A music video drenched in occult rituals is more than entertainment. A political campaign saturated with triangles, circles, flames, and eyes is more than coincidence. Each becomes a ritual disfarzado, a hidden ceremony disguised as culture, conditioning millions who believe they are untouched. Have you noticed how certain patterns repeat endlessly? The eye staring from posters, the triangle glowing in music, stages, the serpent coiled in fashion logos, hidden symbols woven seamlessly into the fabric of the ordinary. The psychological influence is subtle, yet relentless. Once trauma opens the mind, suggestion keeps it open, pliable, receptive. That is why the same imagery travels across films, advertisements, even children's shows. Repetition engraves obedience, and what seems harmless becomes part of a dark agenda. This is the manipulation few dare to admit, because to acknowledge it is to awaken, to see the unseen. And once you see, the veil cannot be restored. Ask yourself, have you ever felt a sudden unease watching a scene, hearing a lyric, staring at an image? That flicker of dread, that instinct that something is wrong, it is not random. It is a trigger. A reminder planted long ago, now reignited by design. The media, like the old rituals, does not need to explain itself. It only needs to repeat, and repetition is power. In silence, in distraction, the message embeds, guiding the collective like a current beneath the waves. Symbols, sounds, shadows, they are the tools of a new priesthood, a hidden power performing ceremonies across screens and speakers. The forbidden knowledge of the past is alive, only dressed in digital light. But that's only the surface. Because if media became the new ritual, then what greater ceremony is unfolding around us right now? One so vast we no longer recognize it as a ritual at all. You've walked with me through shadows, through the echoes of trauma, through hidden symbols and forbidden knowledge whispered by secret societies. And if you're still here, it means you feel it too. That stirring beneath the surface, that sense that nothing is ever as it seems. This path is not entertainment. It is revelation. Each piece of truth we uncover is another fragment of the awakening, another key to resisting the dark agenda shaping the collective mind. If what you've heard tonight resonates, let your voice be part of this hidden network of seekers. Write in the comments, "I see the hidden truth." It will mark you as one who stayed until the end, one who refuses to be lulled into silence. And if this journey moved you, if it opened your eyes, leave a like. It is more than support. It is a sign, a signal that these revelations matter, that the unseen must be exposed. Subscribe if you wish to continue walking deeper into the labyrinth of symbols, rituals, and conspiracies. Each step will take you closer to the unseen patterns that shape the world around you, closer to the forbidden archives that were never meant to be opened. And as this chapter fades, another one is waiting, already written in hidden codes and ancient signs. The next video is not just content, it is the continuation of a secret conversation, one that began centuries ago and now finds you. Follow it, and let the revelations lead you further. Because the story never ends, it only shifts into new forms, waiting for those who dare to see the signs.